Hi, welcome once again to the J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with ink, pen and ink. So have your kneaded eraser, a number 2 or an HB pencil handy, and any type of ink that you would like to use. But make sure that it's archival, that it's permanent, that it's black, and a smooth ink. I probably recommend Pigma Micron pen. They come in various colors and sizes. I like the number 2. Sometimes I'll use a 2 and a 5 together. But whatever you feel comfortable with, have that nice and handy. And let's start doing some ink drawing. So what you want to do is first block in everything with your number 2 pencil. Use simple shapes. So squares, rectangles, triangles, whatever is needed to get those in. The towers that are rounded, if instead of doing a square at the top, just make a little rounded area like this, just nice and round. It doesn't have to be real round. These are kind of farther away. I'm just going to start out with, there's that first tower. That was up a little too high. We'll make it a little smaller. Not really concerned if they're exact because, well, it's a building, you know? You try to get it as close as you can. I'm never going to fit this last tower on, so I'm just going to start it and just say, well, okay, it's over here. There is a ton of information in this. And instead of doing all the little details, just do the basics. Like where these windows up at the top that I'm drawing now, these are called dormer windows. I'm just going to block them in. This is where they go. Not trying to get the detail. I'll get that with my pen. If you ever go to art school, if you ever want to be a professional artist, they teach you architectural terms, because architecture is big part of art, especially ancient architecture or historical architecture. So as I'm drawing, all the names of this stuff, like the buttresses, these things that go up against the building that keep it strong, all those things go through my brain. So remember, ignore the reflections. We'll get those in later. That'll be one of the last things we do. So there's our fortified manor house. Anything that's really light, you just leave it out. Whether it's an edge or whether it's a roof, there's part of that roof that kind of blends into the background. So you may want to just skip that area or just kind of leave it out and let the edges take care of themselves. So as you draw things, those edges will come through. You don't need a line around everything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to my pen. I'm going to zoom into this a little bit. And where do you start? I don't know where to start. I'm going to just start with this first tower here. Kind of work my way out left and right. So So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with that that arch. It's a very dark area under the eaves of the roof. I'm just going to kind of go in. I'm just going to just draw that in very, very lightly. Notice how my pen skips across the surface. Very, very lightly, because I'm not sure if that's exactly where I want it. And you just keep going over until it is. And when you figure it out and you go, okay, that's what I want, I'm just going to zigzag through it, make sure that it's nice and dark. As this roof line kind of rises up here, it's very light on that edge. I may not want to draw that in. I may want to just come up and go, oh, you can see this little window, dormer window kind of poking up over there. Rather than draw everything in, I'm just going to draw in the dark shapes of that little window. So there's a couple triangles. There's a little finial on top. And there's a roof. And that's it. Then that line kind of continues up, and rather than draw it in again, I might put a little dot or a dash up there and just go, okay. You can see where it kind of comes up, and there's a little dark area up in there. If you wanted to, you could draw that in with your pencil first. Depends on how confident you are. But I'm just going to go in and zigzag through that. There's the dark area up on top. And that's under the eaves of that little top. There's another little window up on this side, and it's just a little rectangle. But rather than draw the whole rectangle, I'm going to start out with this little 7. That's the eave part. I know it's dark in there. A couple little dots and dashes, and maybe hatch through it in the form of a rectangle, but without drawing that other side. Maybe some dots and dashes where the triangle part goes. There's a little finial on top. And that's about it. The rest of it we can get with our pen when we do the roof. And I'll show you what we're going to do there. A little dark area on the other side. I have no idea what that is, but I'm just going to throw it in because it helps to define that edge. Any place you see darkness, just put in the areas of darkness with your pen. You can use little hatched lines, you can use dots, little dashes, whatever you need. But try to avoid doing a line all around everything. A single line, I should say. Because we're doing lines, we're doing edges. Here's that other one. It's right up above here somewhere. About right in there. Hatch through it. Here's the little finial that goes on top. And I'm just hatching through shapes of what I think I see. I have no idea what that is. And you don't even need to connect them all. Just leave part of it just kind of hanging out there. Now I'm going to get rid of my graphite because my initial drawing wasn't quite right. And that's okay. Once you get rid of your graphite, you go, oh wait, I can see all that stuff. I see what's going on. Now I want to do some texture in the roof. There's a little bit of gray in there, and I'm thinking gray slate roof, and so it's probably got little lines. I'm going to go in the direction that the roof line goes. I'm just going to do these little slatey kind of lines. As I get down, maybe I'll do less there. Maybe there's a little bit more up at the bottom here. Maybe some more over on this side. And there might be a few over here, just a couple little edges. And notice how our little lines define the edge of that roof. Little dots and dashes, and that's really all you need. You don't need a lot of line in there. And notice how our edges are just get lost, but you as the viewer, you can draw those in. I need a little bit more on the dome top, so maybe I'll just put just a few up in here. Maybe a couple little dots and dashes to just say this is a rounded dome top. Maybe I'll put a few over here. But that's about it. Don't need a ton. Let your eye make those connections. Again, if you come back and go, I need something in there, then you can put a few little dots and dashes just to help define some lines. This tower that's behind it helps define that line of that. Maybe I'm going to throw that in there real quick. I can't see what's going on there, so I'm just going to throw in the little dark areas that I can see. Little dots and dashes, a couple little edges, little dots and dashes. Here's the edge of this roof line. I can't see the edge, but I'm just going to put in some little dashes and dots, and it'll define that roof line just a little bit. If I'm in the wrong place, I can move it. I can take and add some more dots to it and move it over. So same thing with this edge that comes down here. I can't see that edge. I have no idea what's there. So I'm just going to add some little dark areas that I can see. I don't know if these are windows behind it or what those are. I'm just going to add those little dark edges and just say, I can see that. Just the areas of darkness that you see. So I've just got all these little shapes and they're just hanging off there. They're not even connected to anything. But that's okay. As a viewer, your eye will make that connection, go, oh, okay, I can see whatever that thing is supposed to be. Anything that's dark, draw it in. And then leave the rest of it out. Like I say, you can come back in later if you need to. There's a little triangle where the window is. I know it's a window, but I'm just going to draw what I see. These little teardroppy looking tops are interesting. I don't know if I've ever seen too many castles that have this on there, or buildings overall. There's a little finial on there. There's I'm sure it's kind of like a little weather vane thing. I have no idea what it is. So just dots and dashes. I can't see the top of this. I don't know where it ends, so I'm not going to worry about it. We'll just let it go. If I need something later on, I can come back into it. See how they're just hanging off to the side, but yet your eye starts making that connection and going, oh, I see the edge of that. When you're doing windows, though, let me show you very briefly on how to do windows that have glass in them. They're usually recessed into the edge of your building, whatever that is. So just do a little 7. Start out with a little top, and there's a 7. There's one window, Here's the other one. Just a little 7. There's one below it. Little 7. And then you can hatch through them, make them a little wider or a little whatever you want. But wherever the shadows are, it's just this little 7 shape. And that's your window. They look like there might be shutters on the windows. I can, however, see an edge of brick right there. So rather than draw a line down, I'm just going to draw the edge of the brick. If you're a little timid about that, you can take your pencil and you say, okay, this is where the brick line goes. That's where the edge of that building is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here. I'm just going to draw some little brick. And these are just little lines coming off away from that edge. And if you go in the direction that the brick flow, which is slightly, not quite level, but almost, and you get rid of your pencil line, that edge will look really interesting. I'm going to get rid of my pencil line there, just for fun. And you can see that edge without having to draw it in. Little dots and dashes. And these little dots and dashes represent the brick. There's some buttresses there. I'm just going to put those in with these little hatch lines. So I'm going to start out up here, and then they get wider and then wider. And I can come back in and add moss or whatever by these little hatch lines. There's the other one. Okay, the edge of our building, we haven't drawn it in yet, and it's very light. I'm going to allow the trees that are behind it to make up that edge. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, well, if I take my pencil and I draw a little line there and say, okay, that's the edge of my building. Come down here, and then there's trees up beyond. I can even put in the roof line that's up there. Now I'm going to draw some trees. I'm going to show you how to do trees. So the trees, any of the trees that are in the background, let's just kind of move that over. You want to do little M's, N's, and U's, that kind of a thing. So up at the top, where the branches are very light, I'm going to do very little. And you can even just have them kind of hanging off to the side there. Here's some trees. As I get down and I think, well, there's a little darker area there, I can go back in and just darken in that area. And these are just little M's and N's. And you can even say, well, I see a limb out there and it's just kind of hanging out there. You can put that little limb out there and these little M's and N's. And you can just have it hanging out there. Just little dots and dashes even, just to say, hey, there's a limb out there. And everybody knows it. So that's how you do trees. You just pick out the darkest areas. You draw in the darkest areas, and the lightest areas, you just leave it out. If it's like this time of the year is in the spring, and you think, well, I see some branches and I see some tree trunks and things, you can put those in too, but be very light about them. So here's a tree trunk, comes up, and I'm just using dots and dashes. Here's a limb that kind of comes off, maybe another limb over here. Little dots and dashes. If you make lines, then they're going to look more like wrinkles. And so you use little dots and dashes. You can even crosshatch. If they're really dark, you can go the other way. But here's some limbs just kind of coming off. And you can do some little branches kind of hanging off with some leaves on them. The leaf branches have little M's, U's, and W's. N's on the top or M's, W's or U's on the bottom. Then when I'm all done, I can get rid of my graphite and the edge of my building comes through. I don't need to draw a line there. It happens for me. Hopefully you get that concept. This is something you got to practice. It doesn't come naturally. I'm barely touching my paper too. That is one thing you've got to learn, is that light hand. Very light. Almost, you're not even pushing the paper against the desk. Really light hand. As you get to the edge of your paper, to help kind of fade out as it goes, just do less. And it'll look like it kind of fades out. Okay, so you just do less on the edge of your paper. Hopefully these are the easiest trees you've ever drawn. Right towards the bottom, these are really light. Don't draw the light areas, just draw the dark areas. And if you think, well, I need something in there, a couple little dots and dashes, and that's really all you'll need. And if you say, well, Mr. Lowe, it looks like you're just scribbling. I am. Scribbling with purpose. And that's your trees, and that's define that edge of your building. Don't be afraid to leave things out. So remember, the water's going to be the last thing we do, and it's so easy that we can do the entire water in probably less than 5 minutes. Don't get caught up in the water. It's just not that big of a deal. I'm going to go ahead and do this tower, and I want to show you how to do the rock on the tower. This works with brick. These rocks are kind of laid in like brick. So I'm just going to kind of go through, and there's a little window. Just scribble that in. There's another one right here. Scribble that in. The dark one up at the bottom, and scribble that in. Dots and dashes. Now the rest of it, pick out where the darkest rock is, and you can see some that's really dark going through there. This edge over here is really light, so I'm just going to leave it out. And your rock is just these little kind of meandering back and forth dots and dashes. And what I'm trying to do though is, you can see how it kind of arches with the curve of the tower. I want to go in that direction. I'm going to start out at the top maybe. Do some little dots and dashes. Here's a rock right there. I'm just kind of back and forth, but leave a lot out. Don't be afraid to leave a lot out. Everybody understands that that texture travels all the way through it. I'm barely touching the paper, just leave a little back and forth. If you can see rock, I mean if it's big and chunky, you can actually, I'm going to do some big chunky rock down at the bottom, just because usually that's where they would put them. You could do these little like C shapes, little U shaped kind of things, just like this. Do that too. I don't see a whole lot of rock that are that way, so maybe just a couple. The rest of it just dots and dashes. Or you can say to yourself, oh, I see where this really dark area is. I'm just going to put in some little dots and dashes like this and say, these are brick or rock. You can do something like that too. And again, you don't have to go everywhere. Just here and there where you think you can see them. Sometimes they're more pronounced around windows. But wherever you think you need to. You can start from the top and work your way down. You can do a combination of them too. Whatever, when you look at your surface, if you think, well, that looks really bumpy, you do a little combination of them. So now what I want to do is I'm going to do the same thing across the facade, this face here, that I did over here. Just grab some edge and go, oh, okay, I see that gabled roof up there. I want to look at that. I'll look at this dormer window. Just going to pick out the dark areas and draw those in. And since the roof has some gray to it, I'm going to do the same thing I did across this up here. Just going to add some line. I don't know what this is. That looks like a little tower up there behind it. It's probably pretty cool from the other side, but it's hard to see, so I'm just going to throw in some little edges, and hopefully as the viewer, you'll say, oh, I know what that is. If not, it's not that big of a deal. Here's another one of those windows. Just start with the 7. So there's my edge. And then you put a little dot on the bottom just to tell yourself where that corner is. And then just cross hatch through it, or just hatch through it. I don't know what that dark shape is below it. I don't think that's part of the window, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to throw it in anyway. A little buttress in the middle. So this edge has something dark on it. I don't want to draw it all the way down, so I'm just going to hatch through just little edges, little things that kind of come down into it. And then it gets kind of dark down in there. And then when it hits the water's edge, you're going to have a little darker area on the water's edge. It's just where the minerals of the water kind of collect and they get darker. And really, I'm just scribbling. You can do little circles, you can do back and forth, whatever you want. Just scribble in the darkness. What the object is will come through, whatever it is. I'm hoping that y'all are saying, well, ink drawing is really not as hard as I thought it was going to be. It looks much more difficult than it is. Just keep it simple. I'm trying to get down to the water so I can show you how to do the water. So here's the water, and then we'll just finish our drawing out. Any place that it's dark in the water, you want to do meandering lines back and forth. Everything very horizontal, and you could do like little S's, but you're just meandering back and forth. And you do some long ones, some short ones. So just for example, right here I can see where the dark of the background, the tower go, and I can see my tower comes out this way, like this. So I can put in lines there and just go, okay, here's the water, back and forth, back and forth. Where it hits that tower, I end. And the closer I get out, the deeper or longer my edges go. Kind of like that. Does that make sense? And I can say, well, I can see some windows in there. Here's a window. Back and forth. Just little back and forth little edges. And again, don't be afraid to leave things out. Here's some more. And it's very random. You're just back and forth. And you can always come back in and add more. Don't be always the same, you know, go long or short, whatever. And you can even, once you got to this point, you can overlap a little bit. It'll still look okay. Just back and forth. Here's the edge of the castle itself. Is that the easiest water you've ever drawn? Most people have to worry about every little wave in the water. You don't. You just enough information that people understand. That's water. And if you need it darker in some places, you just go back into it, do the same thing. I'm going to use the trees on the other side to define the edge of my building over here. So I can see where the trees are. Just going to let those define the edge. Remember, don't draw a line around everything. I am purposely, in fact, I probably would normally draw a little bit more line, but I'm purposely doing this so that you can see how you don't need those edges. They just take care of themselves. If I used my kneaded eraser there, got rid of all those edges, see how you don't need them? They just take care of themselves. When you're doing trees, sometimes you can start with the trunks, especially you can see the trunks. Some of these trees back in there, you can see some of those limbs coming up, and you can start with those limbs. Just kind of have them hanging out there. You don't really need to attach them. They don't have to be, because they hide behind other branches and other things. And then just do some little branches over the top of them. These little M's and N's. And you just kind of have them hanging out there. If there's some darkness to it, so like right behind here, there's some darkness to this, I can just hatch through it first and then do my little M's and N's over that. And that just gives it looking like there's shadows that's in there. Sometimes, like down in here, if you wanted to, you could just do these little hatch lines through there, leaving some little areas out depending on what you can see of the trunks or of the trees behind it. But really all it is just trying to scribble and block in some of those shapes and values that you see. Don't worry if it's not looking exactly like what you've got there. The joy is just the texture. The joy is the image that you're doing there. And the fact that other people will enjoy it too. So little trees, there's your trees. And it's information. You're just telling people this is a tree, this is a group of trees, you know, this is a wall, this is a rock, this is water. That's all you're doing. You're just telling them visually what's there, what you see. Remember, don't be afraid to just use edges of your shading or your little contouring lines or whatever to define things. And you don't have to draw a line around it. Just leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out. You don't need it, you don't need it. I love water castles because there's just so much character to them, and some of that is the water itself that gets into the rock or into the surrounding area, or the little grass or the trees or the moss. It all adds character, it all adds value to it. And they're beautiful. You know, I find a castle quite lovely. I like the struggle. I like the human existence. The fact that somebody built that. They built it as prestige, as you know, show up the neighbors. Tell them, hey, look at me. Look what I've got. I've got money. I can build this. But it's all there. Also, there's protection. Remember, when you're doing your brick, your line should follow the direction the brick goes, just back and forth, little dots and little dashes. Just follow that direction. You don't need it everywhere, just here and there, wherever it's the darkest. Texture is going to create its own darkness anyway. So usually where those little areas are, you just add more line or more dot. Sometimes just a couple little dots, that's all you need. You really don't need any more. Here I'm just using these little dark shapes of the leaves to denote the edge of the castle. I didn't draw a line there, I just left it out. If it's really light, just leave it out. I'll finish the water here in a bit. There's your trees in the background. Everybody knows they're trees. Simply put. He's got a little bit of a gutter that runs down there. I think I'll just go ahead and find that edge. I like the arrow loops too. Just those little narrow slits. Just use the edge of your line where they start to define that edge of that roof line. You can add little dots and dashes, but those little dots and dashes just to help you to see where those edges are. I get accused of scribbling all the time. Gosh, Mr. Lowe, you're just scribbling. That's what it is. Few little dots and dashes. When you go to your edges, if you want it to kind of look like it just fades out, you just kind of do a few little lines and then just stop. So on your edges, you know, where your edge of your paper goes, you don't have to go all the way out to the edge. Just do a little bit here and there and then just fade it out. I mean, people get that idea. They know what goes on. There's more to it than just that. But not much more is needed. You just leave it out. A little bit in the water to do. And we'll be done. Old buildings are fun to do. There's so much character in there and so much you can do with it. Don't be too intimidated by the water. It's just shapes of darkness. You don't have to draw every little thing. Just back and forth. Remember, just back and forth. So anytime you see something dark that you've put in there, you just do some back and forth darkness, and you got it. Just meandering back and forth. It all mirrors, so you try to mirror what you see. Of course, you could go into this and you spend all day long on it. I don't know. I think you could do a good drawing in about an hour and a half. You know, maybe longer as you're learning. Thanks for coming along with me on this little journey that we call art. Pen and ink can be a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you keep practicing. And I hope that in all that you do, all your practicing, that you understand yourself a little bit better, understand your surroundings, appreciate all the beauties of the earth, and that somehow you can make life better too, because art makes life better. I hope you have a wonderful day.